extinct direwolves, their cries being heard for the first time in thousands of years as now they're back. Is this a sign of a revived Roman Empire coming? We're going to talk about that. Plus, what's going on with the pyramids? This is not something that we've had a chance to discuss here on Encounter today, but we're going to dive into it a little bit here this morning, and we're going to talk about advances in robotics. That's going to make you want to lose your mind. Some crazy footage. We're going to show you video of robots, a robo-horse, some strange activity at the Kaaba. Actually, not really strange, pretty common for there, but strange for us from a Western point of view. Plus, is Satan hijacking near-death experiences? I want to introduce our guest. He's a dear friend of this ministry. He works with Destiny Image, but he is an expert in the field of NDE's near-death experiences. Would you welcome to Encounter today, live in studio, Shaun Tabatt. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, Alan. It's always fun to hang out with you guys. No matter where we are in the country, we seem to find ourselves lots of places not here in your studio, so it's good to be back again.
Yeah, it's good to be home. And this book, by the way, the NDE Experience, we're going to put a link in the description. You actually can get a discount, guys, if you follow the link in the description of this video. The NDE Conspiracy, fascinating. We're going to get to that later on in the program when we talk about NDE's near-death experiences and is Satan hijacking them. It's actually kind of shocking, some of the stuff you were sharing with me. So we'll get to that here in a moment. But first, what's new in the world with you, man? What's going on?
Well, I'm just hitting the road to start promoting this book. So you are my first in-person interview. And
let's go.
I'm really traveling every week for the rest of the month, working on all kinds of crazy book projects, as I always am behind the scenes. We actually have a new project that has just been presented to us, taking a look at how autistic children are seeing in the spirit and seeing angels and demons and things that are happening kind of behind the veil. So that's a whole new territory for Destiny Image and for my team to be working on. And so yeah, lots of book projects. Just got remarried recently, settling into married life again, which has been great. And yeah, just running and gunning, doing all the crazy things I do.
Yeah, that's for sure. You are crazy, but it's good to be connected with crazy people. And we've got some crazy people in the comments, Evan. Who do we have watching with us?
Yeah, let me see. I've been having some issues connect, but it looks like we've got Dave, we've got James. It's great to see you.
You've been having some issues. Do we need to pray about these issues? What's going on?
No. These are just tech issues, not personal.
Just tech issues. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not personal. Jeremy from Ohio. Scotty, great to see you. Jackie from New York. David is from Ohio as well. We got a bunch of Ohio folks in the chat. So,
hello,
Ohio. Let's go.
Well, we want to dive right into this. One of the most shocking things I saw in the news in the last week was the de-extinction of these direwolves. And Evan, if you can pull this up, I don't know what kind of issues you may have having personally or emotionally, but if you're able to pull up these direwolves, I want everybody to see this. If you click on it, you can actually hear direwolves are a type of wolves that are purportedly extinct for 10,000 years. You know, they don't have any idea.
Ancient wolves.
They don't have any idea what they're talking about. So it has been extinct for thousands of years, and they were able to take a tooth, and kind of genetic code from a tooth. Evan, you have the article right there, or the...
Yeah, you want me to read it?
Yeah, read that to us.
Okay, so the direwolf has been extinct for over 10,000 years, so they say. These two wolves were brought back from extinction using genetic edits derived from a complete direwolf genome, meticulously reconstructed by Colossal.
That's what I said.
From ancient DNA found in fossils dating back 11,500 and 72,000 years. This moment marks not only a milestone for us as a company, but also a leap forward for science, conservation, and humanity. From the beginning, our goal has been clear: to revolutionize history and be the first company to use CRISPR technology successfully in the de-extinction of previously lost species. By achieving this, we continue to push forward our broader mission on accepting humanity's duty to restore Earth to a healthier state.
Interesting. CRISPR technology. And guys, in a second, you're going to get to hear the cry of the direwolf. It has not been heard in thousands of years. Do you know anything about this CRISPR technology, Shaun?
I've heard a lot of bad things from my friends over at Defender Publishing through the years. I know Tom Horn talked about that extensively as a pathway to all kinds of horrible things. Hybrid animals, hybrid people, all that kind of stuff. Not a gateway to good things, at least in the circles I run in. They're
supposedly 25% larger than the wolves we have today, and a larger cranium, smarter. And of course, from Jurassic Park, we know that this is going to turn out really well.
Yeah, I mean, all the movies that start with genetic manipulation and bringing back extinct species, they never end well. We should learn from our horror films. I think this might be a bad path.
Yeah, and they're about 5 months old, from what I understand. So I don't know why we're just now hearing about this. 5 months old. Romulus and Remus were the first two. There's a third. I think Calypso is her name. Interesting namings that they're doing. But Romulus and Remus, the first two, they named those after the purported mythic founders of Rome, who were said to be brothers who were raised by wolves. Could this be some sort of prophetic indication of the rise of the Roman Empire? I don't know.
There's at least a correlation to be drawn there. You do wonder sometimes why organizations who are doing this kind of work, why do they give, whether it's these animals or their projects, the names that they give them, they often tie to prophetic things in a way that maybe wasn't intentional, but whether maybe it's God giving us a sign.
Yeah, well, it certainly could be. I mean, God is speaking through everything. So whenever extinct wolves that haven't been around for thousands of years all of a sudden are born and they're named Romulus and Remus after the founders of the Roman Empire, you got to start asking some questions. And then when you consider the fact that this is a private company, these are tech dudes, basically, a tech company who said, let's bring back an extinct species. That shows you where the technology is. In fact, there was an elderly gentleman recently in the news who was gene splicing and doing DNA splicing and creating hybrids and animals, like basically in his basement, and he was in his 70s. Did you hear about this in the news?
No, this is my first.
Yeah,
hearing
some
that
guy
story.
like in his 70s, some grandpa's doing gene splicing successfully, and the government had to come in and show. So the technology is so far beyond anything that we're having reported to us. I remember when we were first talking about cloning sheep.
Right, Dolly the sheep.
Dolly the sheep. How many years ago was that now?
Man, that has to be at least 10, 15 years ago. It's been a minute since that story was big.
And so they're already looking at combining the DNA of different animals. They're already doing that.
Right.
And combining it with humanity.
Well, and I think these are just the stories that are public. My assumption is there's a whole lot of this stuff happening behind the scenes that we never hear about all over the world.
And some of you guys in the comments actually may know a little bit more about this. Like, what are some stuff that you've seen in the news, some things that you're hearing about as far as gene splicing and CRISPR and all this kind of stuff where they're trying to merge human DNA with animal DNA? It's already happening. They're already attempting to do it. And what are you hearing about it? So sometimes you guys kind of cover the news better than we do on these programs.
We had an issue with the wolf cry, so I'm going to try to play it again so everybody can hear it this time.
Yeah, let's take a listen. Yeah, someone said, what would stop them from testing with humans? They're already testing with humans. One person says, I wonder if these wolves would have souls, as animals do have souls, but if these would. That's a good question. Lester Summerall wrote an amazing book on spirit, soul, and body.
Do animals have souls?
Yeah, where he talks about that. Yeah. Isn't this part of the government? No, this is actually a private company who did this, who put all this together. And they've got a 2,000-acre reserve.
Wow.
Where they have these wolves and allow them to roam
A wolf
free.
sanctuary, if you will.
Yes, and they've been feeding them, but now they're slowly introducing what they said carcasses to these wolves, and then we'll see if they hunt. They have not yet started hunting, but that's a great idea. Let's teach the dire wolves to hunt.
Well, if there's one thing, the average rancher or farmer, whoever has to deal with wolves taking out their livestock, it's like, could we have a wolf that's bigger, smarter, just to roam out there?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
I don't know that anybody wants or needs this, but it's fascinating that the technology exists. But why wolves? Why these wolves? It's an interesting place for them to land.
And they say the next thing they want to create like little miniature woolly mammoths so people can have them for pets. Little mini woolly mammoth.
No more pet pigs, little pet woolly mammoth. I could see that being appealing.
But even and Evan, pay attention to the comments too, because I know a lot of folks are going to be kind of injecting what they've heard and what they know, because I want to make sure we include that, because it's interesting information. But it's not just the splicing of genes and kind of the abomination that comes from that, mixing human DNA with animal DNA. But this whole hybridization takes place with technology as well. When we look at the merging of tech with biology, which we see with Elon Musk's company Neuralink, and the technology is really getting out of control. There's a couple videos I want to show you, a couple things I want us to look at here, Evan, and you're kind of juggling the comments as well as. Let's do the robo horse first. Can we do the robo horse?
Sure.
Let's save the robo horse. We'll save the robo horse to the
an hour
end.
later.
No, we're going to do it. We're going to do it later.
Okay.
So we're not going to do the Robo Horse now. I want to go to actually the advances in robot movement, and I want you to see this. Yeah,
This one?
Yeah, one of the comment above it is shoot it, but let's take a look at this.
Okay. Not too bad yet.
Well, look at that.
Oh, wow.
If you remember a year ago, it was hard to get robots to walk.
Right.
I believe this is Boston Dynamics.
Wow.
And they have robots now doing flips, like jumping up in the air and doing flips and landing on their feet and keeping their balance. Breakdancing.
What?
I can do a better cartwheel. I'm not too concerned just yet. But this is the issue with this kind of robotics is it can take 100,000 tries before it figures out to do the smallest, simplest thing.
Right.
But once it figures it out, every one of them can do it.
Right.
And so you've got all these different robots trying all these different things hundreds of thousands of times. But the moment one learns it, now they all know it. And it's kind of this snowball effect as far as the advancement of technology. Should we be concerned, Shaun Tabatt?
Well, and now to go back to a movie reference, this turns out poorly in iRobot as well. I mean, I think the advances in robotics brings up some of the same concerns people have about AI as things are self-evolving and learning. And, who's in control? Like, is there a point where we are no longer in control of these things that we've created, or do they have better ideas for humanity than humanity has for itself? Go back to Terminator. Again, we've seen all these ideas play out in movies, and yet we're ironically creating all of these things throughout technological advances right now. That I'm not saying these things are going to end bad, but we're literally recreating the science fiction we grew up with right now. It's a strange space to be in.
Yeah, and we're going to get to a place where we're dependent on these things. It is estimated in 10 years, every household will have one of these in their house.
Rosie the robot from the Jetsons.
Rose, that's exactly right. Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. What do you think? Would you have one in your house? You may say no now, but I think in 10 years it's going to be like air conditioning.
Right.
It's going to be something that is, homes will come with one.
Right. I could see the appeal too. Like as I'm 47. As I get older, 10 years from now, I might like having some kind of a robot servant in the house to lift things, move things that I might not be able to move, or
Come
things
on,
I
do the
might be
dish,
able to
the
do.
laundry.
Yeah, I see the appeal. Certainly.
How long do those laundry baskets sit there before the laundry gets folded?
I mean, with 10 kids, they could sit there for a week and nobody will touch them.
10 kids.
Everybody
brother.
hopes somebody else is going to do it.
How much long? How many washers and dryers do you have?
We have one washer, one dryer.
Bro, you cannot. That can't be possible.
No, in terms of chores, like the kids are assigned their own laundry, and so all the kids have learned to do their own laundry and learn to be responsible for that.
Well, you got a baseball team, so that's
pretty much. Yeah,
you got to do that. What about dishwashers? How many dishwashers do you have?
Just one dishwasher.
You got 10 dishwashers actually.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
Yeah.
I heard one genius say that you actually should have 2 dishwashers, and you put them in, and once they're clean, you take them. You use the dishwasher to store it,
Right.
and you take them out and use them, and then you put them in the other dishwasher. They get clean, and just kind of
Just go back and forth.
it's a rotation.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant thinking. Evan, what do we have in the comments?
Well, Michael says that robot is more athletic than I am, which I
That's
thought
fair.
was-
More athletic than
why
the
is
two
he
of us,
commenting on your athletics, Evan? He hasn't seen how athletic.
No, he was talking about himself.
Himself.
Oh, okay.
Himself.
And
yeah.
yes, he does. Michael is in the room right next to us.
Oh, okay.
That Michael. Let's see. Shane says our new soldier, potentially. Let's see. And then also Faye asked earlier about where did those wolves comes from? Those are genetically spliced and created in a lab. If I'm
Correct.
saying that correctly, you can go back and watch that again if you need to. Shane says hire a nanny, and they told us what they were going to do. Joseph says teach the robots to preach the gospel. Come on.
There you go.
And finally, Stoney says he needs proof on the cartwheel bishop.
Need proof on that? Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get right to work on that for you. pack a lunch.
One interesting angle, I think, on the robots is like, are they going to be used where they're working off of their own intelligence, so to speak, or in the case somebody had mentioned like a robot soldier, will it be more like a drone where they're directed and controlled to take the place of, say, a human soldier, just like we don't have a human pilot per se flying in a drone. I mean that's a whole different kind of application versus it works off of its own intelligence and can make decisions on its own, so to speak.
Yeah, they're even advertising robotics where surgeons are from across the country are using robots at a surgical room right there. Yeah,
to perform procedures from thousands of miles away.
Yeah. Now, as far as having their own autonomous intelligence, I think that's probably the goal. In fact, we can pull this up. Google doesn't understand their own AI. So this isn't concerning at all. And Evan, you can play this on 1.25 speed.
Got it.
But let's take a listen to what Google had to say about their artificial intelligence, guys. And I want to know what you think about this.
AI systems are teaching themselves skills that they weren't expected to have. How this happens is not well understood. For example, one Google AI program adapted on its own after it was prompted in the language of Bangladesh, which it was not trained to know.
We discovered that with very few amounts of prompting in Bengali, it can now translate all of Bengali. So now all of a sudden, we now have a research effort where we're now trying to get to 1,000 languages.
There is an aspect of this which we call, all of us in the field call it as a black box. You don't fully understand. And you can't quite tell why it said this or why it got wrong. We have some ideas, and our ability to understand this gets better over time. But that's where the state of the art is.
You don't fully understand how it works, and yet you've turned it loose on society?
Yeah, let me put it this way. I don't think we fully understand how a human mind works either.
So the answer is yes. You don't understand how it works, and you've turned it loose. Now, when you mentioned black box, a lot of this is happening in black box. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
So artificial intelligence, a lot of the developments that are happening what they call a black box, meaning it is completely unknown to the designers what is going on. That within AI, something is happening, and they can't track it, and they don't understand how it's learning these things. So it's in a black box. It's beyond what we can see, what we hear, what we know, what we can test. AI is somehow learning things we didn't train it to learn. For example, that entire language that it learned just like that without being taught that language, and they don't understand how it did that. So therefore, how the computer did that is in a black box, and they don't fully get it. Is that concerning at all?
Well, and even in that video, they described there was some kind of a prompt given to them in Bengali, and then the AI just went and learned the Bengali language. It sounds like all on its own. I mean, if it's connected to the internet, it sure seems plausible and possible. But if it wasn't trained to do that, that's a whole nother confusing question.
Well, that's what they're saying, and that's what's been happening. And there was that famous incident with Meta, and they had their two AIs who were created a separate language and were communicating, and the programmers had no idea what they were saying to one another, so they had to shut it down. So it's that kind of thing that is concerning for folks, and I think there's good reason to be concerned. Evan?
Oh, yeah, I'm concerned.
Are you?
Yeah. Now, honestly, there's part of me that's like, that's kind of weird, but I'm not too concerned because it's a tool. I use it. I use AI on a regular basis.
We all do, whether we know it or not.
However, when it's making decisions and it's learning things on its own, you cannot control what it's learning.
Right.
So how do we know that what it's learning is the correct thing to learn? And how can you control another concerning thing is that they've been able to look outside of the black box, and they found that programs that were going to be deleted or that were going to be updated intentionally lied about being updated and were trying to preserve themselves. Yeah.
This sounds like every horrible techno horror movie where the being is trying to protect itself in a different computer or copy itself over before we shut it down.
That's exactly what it's doing. And to us, this sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
But he's saying, it sounds normal to me. And that's this generation.
So here's what's concerning to me. So we have the kind of the concern that we can't control what it's learning, or what is it learning? We don't know what or where it's learning that. The same concern is felt by those who we don't want them learning that. I don't know if that makes sense. So Kamala said something similar when she was running during the election. Somebody asked her about AI, and she said, in her natural way of phrasing things, basically that the concern is what information we're giving the AI and what it's learning off of. So if we get in here now, then we can kind of help mold and control potentially the information that's being provided to these machines.
Yeah, I think it's Joseph said, well, let's find a cure for cancer.
Yeah.
And a lot of AI researchers and developers have said, we will find a cure for cancer. It just so happens that after we do that, they might destroy humanity.
Right.
So it's all about trade-offs, right?
Every horrible movie plot ever. It is interesting, though. I think if I was in a training last week, and we were learning how to do like cover manipulation, like if you want to refresh a book cover using ChatGPT, and the guy who was doing our training had it set up in a way so you could see what ChatGPT was doing and where it was, with the prompts it was using and the internet sites it was pulling from. And what was fascinating is we went like 2 or 3 steps down reimagining Rick Renner's cover for is it The Lost World of the Flood? The one with Noah on the cover. And it allowed us to do 2 or 3 variations. And then all of a sudden it just sat there thinking. And it went and searched the web and scanned a bunch of Rick's websites and did all kinds of crazy stuff, going off in a direction that had absolutely nothing to do with recreating the cover a third time. But it read all this other information and gave us an unexpected third cover variation, but it just went off on its own and didn't do what we asked. It read and learned a bunch of stuff and did something different. It was strange.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing. We've warned about this. I wrote about this in the book Summoning the Demon, and about the developments of AI, how it can be used for good, how it can be used for the advancement of the gospel. Can you imagine AI street preachers programmed to preach only the gospel?
The robot, he'll be out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I mean, Shane says, sounds like our educational system. You know, like, are we controlling what they're learning in the educational system?
Oh, well, a lot of that's happening in a black box, too. My name is not Iron Bill. I am a she. And my name is Fee? F-E? Fee?
I thought it was Faye.
Faye?
Faye? I don't know if you're referring to someone in the comments, but I thought that was an important comment to read. So let's take a look now. We haven't actually addressed the pyramids here on this program yet, and there's a reason for that, and I'll express that here in a moment. But I think we have a clip just to show you as we Shaun and I walk through this. For those who don't know, through LiDAR radar detection, they have purportedly discovered, you can go ahead and hit play.
Okay.
They have purportedly discovered these structures underneath the pyramids. So what you see on top, above the kind of line, are the pyramids, and then beneath it, these spiraling cylinders. And
columns.
Columns, that's a better way to put it. Columns. And it kind of skip through there and see if we can see what they see underneath. And underneath the cylinders, there are purportedly large, this is kilometers, large cubes. Wow. Yeah, that's what they... Now, one of the reasons why we have not covered this on this program is because using this type of radar for this purpose is brand new. And so all of this could be disproven. We want you to know in this program, we're not going to just jump on things and say, look at this, and this is proof of advanced civilization. Right now, it's not proof. Right now, it's just interesting because what we have... those images that you're seeing online are not the images that the radar produced, because the radar is going down. Those are images that were created partially by artificial intelligence.
Right. 3D reconstructions of the scan data.
Yeah, that's exactly
just
right.
like you would have in a 3D data from a CAT scan.
Yeah. And so we're not sure whether or not that's actually what's underneath. So time will tell whether or not they let us do some investigations beneath the pyramids of Giza. But what are your thoughts whenever you see this?
Well, I mean, I think the columns might give us an indicator why the pyramids haven't necessarily sunk into the ground or shifted as much. I mean, there seems to be an interesting stellar foundation system between the 4 pillars and whatever that box or rectangle is on the bottom. I'm super curious what it is that spirals around the columns, because it wouldn't make sense that you would need that if it was a structural support of some sort. Like, is that a staircase? Like, what, is it is it something for practical use? Does it tie into their vision of the afterlife? Everything in like pyramids and tombs seems to be extremely intentional and had a purpose. So, I wonder if there was maybe both a practical use and a spiritual idea behind it, or maybe it's just a set of steps. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the larger theories is that these pyramids were generators, that they were actually used. It didn't have anything to do with the afterlife other than maybe placing them in a place of power or energy meant something, but that they were actually... Evan's looking up all kinds of stuff online there.
Sure. Oh yeah, I've got a PDF from the people who created the report.
Yeah.
And so if you want to read this, you can. We found this on this post. There is reader added context, And
that's right. I wanted you to read that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a link to this PDF. So the reader added context says the original study referred to by these claims does not show any massive structures going down hundreds of meters. However, it does show how this PDF here shows how the science works. So you can come in here and you can kind of see how here's the math behind it. So the object, I guess the radar object, the SAR, moves from left to right, north to south, etc. And it tries to create an image based off of the angles. And so it shows you kind of what's going on there. And it tells you its limits. It tells you what it can do, what it can't do. So still, we're not sure yet. Even I think the reader added context isn't, I don't know how true this is, whether or not it shows any massive structures.
And so we're just cautioning you about jumping on the bandwagon as of yet in regard to this subject matter, but it is interesting because there are two narratives in society today. One is that life is random.
Right.
Has no cause, has no purpose, and we are slowly but surely advancing. We've gone from worse to better, and it's going to get better and better and better. And then the other narrative is that God created life, He created it perfectly, and that we have actually been devolving ever since then.
Right.
And when you see things like this could be evidence of an advanced civilization far beyond any technology we've ever had, proving that we're actually not advancing, we're kind of devolving.
Going in the wrong direction. Well, and I wonder, you'd mentioned if it's some kind of a generator, could those spiral shapes around those columns, could it be bands of wire? Or, if like it really depends how you're trying to interpret what those shapes mean, and what it could have been used for. But we certainly struggle to figure out ancient technology. I mean, we couldn't rebuild so many of these ancient structures today, let alone figure out how an ancient civilization did it.
Well, some say it could be stairs. Some say it could be a slide. Why not? It could be an ancient water park.
Yeah.
We're trying to make this big, complicated thing out of it, and they're just trying to get cool in the summer.
Take the slide to eternity. We'll get you down there.
What's more concerning?
What's that, Evan?
The military base about 25 miles south of the Giza pyramids.
I haven't heard about this military base. What is this?
Okay, so let me pull this up. I've got Google Maps here. So here are the Giza pyramids, right?
Right.
And about 25 miles south down here, it's an old SAM site. And it seems to be unused potentially right now. But I found a CIA.gov document about this site specifically. So in the 70s, the CIA was researching this site, specifically SAM deployment in Egypt. And so it describes what this was used for. It is surface-to-air missile sites, which is what SAM stands for. So this base, about 25 miles south of the pyramids, people are talking about it. They don't know what it is. It was used as a surface-to-air missiles base in the 70s. However, no one knows exactly what it's being used for right now. There does seem to be this, at least, fence or wall around it. It is an interesting site. People are wondering, like, what are these holes for? Why is it shaped in such a weird way? And then what's with all these weird horseshoe-shaped buildings around it down here? So people are wondering about this. I don't think any information has come out yet, but thought I'd share it real fast.
Area 52.
Could be. Very well.
Area 52. Guys, online, you guys sometimes know more about this stuff than we do. Have you gotten any information about this military base there? And what are folks saying in the comments, by the way? Shane, I'm seeing, says, so was that built before Lucifer's flood and the destruction of the first world, or did the giants build it before Noah's flood? I love that you asked that question, and that's what we're wondering.
Right.
This advanced technology that shows that there was an advanced civilization before the flood. Great question. Evan?
That is a good question. Do we know the answer?
Ancient water park.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Ancient
Splash.
water park.
Egyptian Splash Mountain, right there.
Yeah. Matt Guerra says, where's Indiana Jones when we need him? Maria says, these robots can be programmed to flip out and hurt you. Come on. I mean, yeah, they could.
Just without feeling bad either, because they'll do it thinking that they're fulfilling their programming.
Right. Following their orders.
They're just following orders. So there could be all these get put in every home, and then there's an Order 66 that takes place, and half of humanity is destroyed, including all the Jedi.
Do it.
Do it. All right. So let's dive into kind of one of the most controversial subjects we're going to talk about here today. And in a moment, we'll get to the stampede at the Kaaba, which is, I think, really shows kind of the cultish nature of Islam. And I've spent a great deal of time in Muslim nations and working to preach the gospel there. And Islam is a cult, and it is a twisted, violent cult. Now, there are peaceful adherents to it, particularly in America. I say American Muslims are very much like American Christians. They're not engaged with the source material as they should be. So there's many wonderful, peaceful people, wonderful peoples. The Arab community is one of the most hospitable in the world, and I've been about as blessed by them around the world as I have about anybody else. But the radical adherents of Islam, we're going to show you video here shortly about what's happening at the center of their religion, and the clip is actually kind of disturbing. We'll look at that, and then maybe I'll show you the robot horse if you're good.
Only
If you
we're
hit the
good.
thumbs up button, if we get some thumbs ups on this video, hit the thumbs up button right now. You'll get to take a look at the terrifying robot horse that is being developed by Kawasaki. So we'll talk about that here in a moment. But I want to talk about the NDE conspiracy, because you're an authority, Shaun, on near-death experiences, and you've written about this. You've written several books about this.
Yeah, this is book number 4. I've spent the past 7+ years unexpectedly immersed in the near-death experience space, and so it's a place I never intended to be, but God's given me some road here to run on.
Well, the satanic nature of how he could be hijacking, Satan could be hijacking these near-death experiences are what we're going to talk about. But what was the first book that you wrote?
Goodness, I have to remember. Real near-death experience stories. So much like yourself, I've done content and podcasting for many years, and we wanted to do a proof of concept with real near-death experience stories, where we actually transcribed some of our most popular YouTube videos, our interviews with near-death experiencers, and Randy and I did a little bit of commentary about the things that were significant and important from those experiences, and that did relatively well. And so we've done 2 books past that, and then this 4th book, the NDE Conspiracy, is my very own first solo book. So
Wow.
all my previous books were with Randy, and now I'm going out on my own.
Randy's a good guy, by the way.
Oh, I love Randy. He's one of my dearest friends.
We got to see him at NRB, and he's just the sweetest guy. Loves Jesus with all his heart.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
he had a near-death experience that
did.
thrust him into this narrative.
Yeah. Randy was probably one of the first near-death experiencers I got to know. I still remember back in the day when I worked at Baker Publishing Group, I got his book proposal because I ran the marketing team at that time, and I remember reading through it, and I was super skeptical. I was like, who's going to want to read a book about a business executive who had a near-death experience? Like, who's going to care about this? But you have to remember, back then, we weren't too far removed from some of the popular heaven books of the late 90s and the early 2000s, where some of those people recanted and said they lied and were, just trying to make a buck off of their stories. So I remember when Randy's book came in, that we still had kind of a bad taste in our mouths for are these people trying to deceive us? But I've found, once you meet an experiencer like Randy or many of the other folks I've met, and you kind of get to see them face to face and hear their stories, see their countenance and how they'll talk about how they were transformed by their experience and their life since their NDE, it's pretty hard to not be convinced that these are real stories. So,
Especially when it lines up with Scripture.
Yeah,
As long as it's
absolutely.
biblical, I'm okay with it, which is when we first started talking about this. I remember when you guys, I said, well, hey, as long as it's biblical, I don't have a problem with it. So we had Randy on, and what a joy it was to interview him. And just in a nutshell, what happened to him? What was his near-death experience? Do you recall?
Yeah, so Randy had been on a flight to do an interview and flew home, and he had some issues with his leg was swelling up. But rather than go to the doctor, he decides to go on a bike ride, and he comes back home, and it's getting worse and worse, and his leg's getting more and more swelled, and he's in pain. And he ends up going to the doctor, and he had some issues with, I believe it was blood clots in one of his legs.
Right, yeah.
And things were so far gone, it was very hard for them to do anything. But he ends up getting a MRSA infection in one of his lines in his IV, and that's really what ended up taking him out. His blood coagulated, they couldn't even draw blood, and he dies. So that's what took him to the other side. I've got a 9-point framework in the book, kind of talking about the different stages of NDEs, and the first one is something to the effect of, any path could get you there. These folks who have near-death experiences, they woke up this morning just like you or I, and were going about their day-to-day. They didn't know they were going to have a tragic accident or a medical issue or something that just seems to come up out of the blue. So, it's not like folks plan to have an NDE. It's just kind of thrust upon them.
Wow. Well, something to consider. Tomorrow's promise to no man.
Yeah.
Today's the day of salvation. Now is the appointed time. And you've done a good job in previous books kind of outlining how do we judge a true NDE versus a false one. And the research you've done is compelling. In fact, you were telling me you were just at an NDE convention or conference, and how dark it is. That it's a very small percentage of Christian content in this space.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us, when we start working in the space, we're kind of naive, where we're like, oh, it's all just beautiful heaven stories and, you know, hell stories that are going to help somebody turn their life around and that kind of a thing. And once you go to the other side of the fence, so to speak, it's a lot darker. You'll encounter psychics and mediums, people talking about past and pre-life memories, UFO encounters, and you know, I think a lot of this space, like 50 years ago, there was, you know, more medical doctors and just an average believer like you and me who are interested in the afterlife having these conversations. And through the decades, you've had all this other stuff come flooding in that's kind of muddied the waters. And I feel like what's really challenging is people are attracted to the NDE space for two reasons. Either A, they had their own near-death experience and they're trying to make sense of it and figure out, like, what does it mean for me? Or you have people who've lost a loved one, grandma passed away, or you know, anybody in their life, and they'll go to Google and YouTube and they're searching for these sorts of stories for reassurance of the afterlife and that their loved ones are okay.
And if Christians aren't talking about it,
yeah, then they'll get good content, but it's a 50-50 chance. Are you going to get, you know, Randy and me talking to somebody where we're going to be talking about Jesus and steering you in a good direction, so to speak? Or are you going to encounter another video where they're going to encourage you, like, you need hope? Well, you should go out there and, you know, consult this medium. They're going to reconnect you with grandma and let you know that she's at peace. And so, you know, for better or worse, people's eternal destinies are in the balance for these sorts of stories that they encounter. But they're not all the same. You know, they're not all good. And that's really the point of this book, is to say we need to be really discerning by what we're taking in, how we let it affect our ideas about God and the afterlife. And there hasn't been as much conversation on these topics as Randy and I would have liked to see. And so I finally set out and wrote this book on my own.
Well, the NDE conspiracy, guys, the link is in the description of this video, and it's very evangelistic because if you know people who aren't saved,
Right.
People who aren't saved are very interested in near-death experiences.
Oh, absolutely. It's the universal apologetic. I've found as I've been traveling the last few years, whether it's in a restaurant or airports or wherever, everybody wants to know about what's going to happen when they die.
Yep.
Everybody wants to know that their loved one who's already crossed over is okay. And so I don't care what walk of life you're from, what part of society you may live in, everybody's going to die, and we all want reassurance about what's going to happen. So this is one of the easiest topics to bring up and talk to people.
No walls come up. There's no resistance. You know, whenever you say, I'm going to talk about near-death experiences. Oh, really? I want to. What stories do you have? And so this is called the NDE conspiracy. Can we trust eyewitness accounts of heaven, hell, and the afterlife? And that's the ultimate question. Can we trust? So, what do you have examples in this book of different NDEs? I know that you do, but I'm asking it for the audience.
Yeah, no, I get into stuff I wasn't able to cover in previous books. We look at kind of the history of near-death experiences that, you know, these things have been documented for thousands and thousands of years. And so I share some ancient accounts, some accounts throughout church history. I talk about some fun things like Thomas Edison did an interview where he talked about that he was creating what he termed a spirit phone. And he actually had reporters and like spiritualists and mediums coming out while he demonstrated this device. It didn't really go anywhere. What's fascinating to me, and Thomas Edison is one of my favorite inventors of all time. I've read a lot about him through the years.
Evan, look this up while he's talking about this. The Thomas Edison spirit phone.
What's interesting, if you get into some other conversations about kind of the rivalry between Tesla and Edison, you had Tesla talking about his work with radio waves and thinking he was encountering the afterlife or able to hear spirits. And I really wonder if this was Edison's attempt to newsjack and get one up kind of over Tesla, because he got a lot of attention for it. But, you know, in terms of after Edison died, there was never, you know, blueprints or a prototype of this device ever discovered. And so I just wonder if he was
bluffing,
a brilliant guy getting attention.
Well, he was. So I mean, he was brutal, wasn't he? Edison was kind of a brutal.
Yeah, he was. He was a driven man.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. So, any information on the spirit phone, Evan?
Yeah, let's see.
I got to know about this.
Thomas Edison's spirit phone or necrophone was a proposed device. It looks like not a built invention according to like Forbes and phys.org, but it would allow the living to communicate with the dead, a concept he explored in the 1920s, though it never materialized as a working device.
How many of you have never heard of that? Why am I just now? Maybe I have heard of it, but why am I just now? I feel like I'm hearing about it for the first time.
I heard about it in passing in an audiobook I was listening to about like inventors and like crazy things that they had, you know, gone after. And so
both Tesla and Edison were attempting to create some sort of device to communicate
Edison
with
was
the dead.
Tesla was messing with radio waves, and the sounds he saw, he thought he was hearing like ghosts or departed souls or some kind of a thing. And so, again, whether Edison was trying to one up Tesla, we may never know. But yeah, Edison and the spirit phone, it's kind of part of NDE lore, attempting, just think you could call grandma in the afterlife. I mean, you
Just imagine. Saul tried that, didn't he, with the witch at Endor?
Yeah, we actually get into Saul's adventure of visiting the witch or the necromancer, medium, if you will, at Endor. Because again, this near-death experience space, there's tons of mediums and psychics operating there. That conference you referenced I went to, there were pet psychics. So if you want to know how Fluffy is doing, or how you've not fulfilled her every need, they could let you know. But there were a lot of mediums keynoting, talking about their work in this space, where they offer their services to help you reconnect with their lost loved ones. And I think the challenge you see is in their worldview. A lot of these mediums and psychics, they'll tell you they don't believe in demons. So their spirit,
of course not.
Their spirit guide is just some helpful spirit who helps them out.
Yeah.
And these lost souls, as they think that they're channeling, they think they're just like the lost soul of grandma, not a demon, masquerading as this familiar spirit.
Which is what it is.
Kind of a thing.
A demon masquerading as a familiar spirit. And I don't know, I'd be interested to know your view of the whole situation. It's very controversial with Saul and his encounter with this familiar spirit. And but I often think of Oda Mae Brown, from Ghost. That's what I think of when you talk about these. You remember Oda Mae Brown, Whoopi Goldberg's character from the movie Ghost, and the psychic network, how it went bankrupt. Why didn't they see that coming? It's the old, the old
They should
adage.
have known.
They should have known.
They needed to consult other spirits for direction. No, I did a bit of a dive into Saul's story, and what's interesting when you read through that account, the witch or necromancer, whatever you want to call her, when Samuel appears on the scene, she's shocked. The text says she screams. And a lot of commentators think she was expecting her spirit guide that she was familiar with to show up. And for whatever reason, God actually let the real Samuel come through to rebuke Saul, to respond to Saul, which is interesting. I would say that's like a fractional percentage case where there may be, like if you ask this question to people who have researched widely in this space, or, is it possible that there might be a lost soul stuck between earth and the afterlife, so to speak? And most like pastors and priests and people in the space, they say it's possible if God's allow it, but there's no real precedent for that as any kind of a norm. But I think in terms of Saul's case, he gets rebuked, he goes into battle and he dies. I'm not saying he necessarily died because he visited the medium, but again, in Israel, it was against the law. Necromancers, witches, they were to be put to death. The king of Israel certainly knew there was a prohibition against this. But I think we see this all throughout Saul's life journey of, I don't really want to wait on God. I'm going to take things into my own hands. I'm going to do my own thing. And I think that's the impatience people have. And while they'll try to turn to a medium or somebody because they're desperate to reconnect with their loved one, and it seems like a quick path to be able to do that, but if you talk to anybody who's worked very long in exorcism or deliverance ministry, there's so many people that they've ministered to who it all started with what seemed like a harmless visit to a psychic or a medium.
Always.
And then all of a sudden, demons start manifesting and showing up in their life, and they start going down this horrible path. And so, I get the correlation into NDEs because it's, it relates to the continuation of consciousness and being able to connect with that. But it's offered as this harmless, we're going to bless you. You're going to be, you're going to get closure. And it's really a path unto darkness. So I feel like it's one of the things Satan has slowly, pushed into the NDE space to take over more of the conversation and lead people away from God. Going that route isn't going to take you anywhere near Jesus.
Yeah. And by the way, for those watching, the traditional view of the whole encounter with Samuel, Saul, the witch at Endor, is that it was a familiar spirit.
Right.
That's the traditional view, that it was a familiar spirit, and that actually what the spirit said, today you'll be with me, or something like that. It made Saul some promise indicating that Saul would be in heaven. However, Saul was in absolute rebellion, in witchcraft, and he died in that rebellion. And so it says that even that spirit lied about him being with Samuel, because he obviously would not go to that place.
Right.
So that it was a familiar spirit pretending to be Samuel is the traditional view.
Yeah,
of that
absolutely,
passage.
and that's what I would definitely lean into. As I said earlier, some commentators wondered based on her reaction,
Right,
was
of
it
course,
actually
yeah.
Samuel coming through? She seemed shocked
Yeah.
for some reason. If this was her normal business of conjuring spirits, why would she be surprised at what came through?
I'm watching is it the House of David right now?
House of David, yeah.
House of David. Have you seen it?
I've watched the trailer, but I've not seen any of the episodes.
We've only
yet.
seen like 3 episodes so far. It has extra biblical content because it's showing you the events around.
Right.
But I love how they're introducing the Nephilim, and they just introduced the witch at Endor as far as what we were watching. And interested to see what direction that goes in. That's going to be fast. Really well done, guys. Watching, have you seen it? Have you seen the House of David? I want to know what y'all think about it. And Evan, let us know what folks are saying in the comments.
Yeah,
This is a
let's
great
see.
conversation, by the way.
It is. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. We got some comments. Number 1, Destiny Image is watching. Great to see you on here.
Hi, Destiny Image.
That's pretty cool.
Glad-
He's at work. He is working.
Glad somebody's keeping the office running while I'm away today.
Exactly. Let me see. And I've lost one of the comments. There were some questions. One person asked about, well, I lost it.
Now let's see. Priscilla says, can there be a similar danger with the usage of AI seeking answers without waiting on the Lord, especially for those in rebellion like the Sauls? That's a brilliant point. And they're already dealing with the wealthy of the wealthy are downloading their consciousness, if you will, into AI so that you can keep talking. In fact, Evan's not downloading his consciousness, but if you join, Evan has a community called The Mob where he trains Christians how to reach people through social media. So if you want to grow in social media, particularly YouTube, then you can go to didiomedia.org for more information. But within The Mob, and Evan can you pull up an example here so we can see?
Not logged in on this computer.
So if you log in, if you become a member of The Mob, one of the advantages is he's put all of his information, everything that he knows about social media, into this AI called Shamgar, which means God is on the move. But you can actually ask Shamgar a question about your YouTube channel, about your thumbnail, about whatever the case may be, and Shamgar will answer as Evan would answer.
Real-time Evan-like feedback.
Yeah, real-time Evan-like feedback.
Even with the sarcasm.
You
There
can
you go.
talk with Evan.
Gotta have the sarcasm.
Does
Yeah.
it really have? It doesn't have the sarcasm.
It's got a hint of sarcasm.
A hint of sarcasm?
It took a lot of dialing to make sure it wasn't too much. But yeah.
So that's super cool. But what's fascinating to me about this book is you call it the NDE conspiracy.
Right.
What is the conspiracy that you dive into in this book?
Well, one of the things Randy and I encountered early on in our journey was our friend Brian Melvin. And in his near-death experience testimony, he'll talk about how he found himself in this place. It looked like the house that he grew up in as a child. A few things were out of place, but it looked like home. It was familiar. It was comfortable. And he had what looked like people, souls on the other side. They tend to look like people for whatever reason. And they were like, "Oh, Brian, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to heaven. Like, you've arrived." And all of a sudden, he saw what looked like his mom. And he was thinking to himself, my mom's not dead. Why would she be here welcoming me into heaven? Now, Brian would tell you if he had been resuscitated in those early moments, he would have thought, I'm fine. I went to heaven.
Obviously, I'm going to
go
heaven.
to heaven
Yeah.
next time. And what happens after he had that thought is all of a sudden, all those beings shifted into these serpent-like, demonic-looking, horrifying creatures. And as his experience goes further, one of them takes him down into hell, and he has this whole hell experience. And so that was probably my first encounter with a real overt.
And you go into detail in the book, by the way. So if people want the story, links in the description. Make sure you get
so
it.
that's one of the first really overt deceptions I encountered, and that set my mind to wondering: are there other kinds of deception happening in NDEs? And the place I see it most often is you'll hear these near-death experience accounts. Again, people who do interviews, people who write books, but in those interviews, they'll talk about how, well, I died and I encountered God, and God is this nondescript, vague being of light, and it's all love, and I'm in everything, and everything's in me, and everybody just gets to go to heaven. And one of the most ridiculous examples I give in the book is from a woman who was given too much anesthesia. She dies during a surgical procedure, and she meets a being of light and love, as she describes it, thinking it's God. And this being tells her that cannibalism, rape, murder, those things aren't really bad. They're just like soul growth and preparation for like the other side or the future.
Wow.
And, I look at something like that and I'm like, man, you don't even need half of a moral compass to go, yeah, that stuff's evil. That stuff is bad. And so, I feel like legitimate NDEs would more lean into the traditional heaven and hell stories that you tend to see published in our Christian publishing space. In those circumstances, God is so obvious and he's so intentional to reveal himself. They will encounter Jesus, they'll encounter the Father. Sometimes they even, although it's less common, they might even encounter the Holy Spirit, but it's obvious, it's purposeful, they know who they're encountering versus, these circumstances where it's this just nondescript ball of light and they're giving you really whack, bad theological ideas. And so like that is some of the deception that I see where, I feel like God's given us these near-death experiences as a way to introduce himself to people because everybody's interested in this stuff, to say there's a heaven and a hell. There's real afterlife destinations with real blessings and consequences, if you will. And so much of the other stuff that's been kind of jumbled on top into the space is just paths into darkness, paths away from the gospel. And that's really one of the things that I think has been most concerning to me through the years, and as well as Randy, as we worked on so many projects, is we really want to see near-death experience testimonies be very Jesus-centric and be very gospel-focused, because it's really sad if we just share these heaven and hell stories, but we don't ever introduce people to Jesus. Like it's pathetic if we talk about the afterlife, but we don't tell you the path to, getting to a heavenly destination, the afterlife. I think that's something that's really been missing from a lot of previous books that we've seen in this space.
Are you familiar at all with how many people search about NDEs and that kind of thing online? Or if you looked that up, that would be interesting.
No, I've not looked at that, but we had talked about this.
Thousands
we
upon
talked
thousands.
about this before the interview. Again, it's people who are hurting. They lost a loved one, or they're trying to make sense of their own NDE. It's kind of a 50-50 chance of what the algorithm gives them. I ironically, last summer, I went to 2 NDE conferences back to back. One was much more secular and new age, and then the other one was Randy's big heaven conference he had out in San
Christian,
Diego.
yeah.
So back to back. And I encountered people at both conferences who spent some time talking to me, and they're like, I ended up here because I lost grandma. I was looking for hope, and I found these interviews and this thing, and I'm here at this conference. And at the more secular New Agey conference, they'd tell you about their spirit guide and the medium that they had connected with after encountering that content. And then at Randy's conference, I had conversations with people where some of them were even, I'd encountered that dark side of the near-death experience space, the mediums and the other stuff. But then I found the interviews you and Randy did for 2 Christian Dudes, and I realized I was dabbling in bad stuff, and that got me out of that. But again, people are just searching for hope, and it really depends which videos they start consuming or which podcasts they start listening to or watching as to what's going to fill that need that they have.
Well, people are searching for it, and we, those of you watching online, we're part of this. We can help them find the right information by consuming content like this. The fact that you're watching this interview right now is going to help this interview get in front of more people who need these answers. When you share, when you hit the thumbs up button, when you get the books, the link is in the description. The NDE Conspiracy, Can We Trust Eyewitness Accounts of Heaven, Hell, and the Afterlife? Get the book, get 2 copies, and give it as a gift to someone, because it's such a fascinating read, interesting subject matter. Stay grounded in biblical truth, understand the 9-point NDE framework and terminology, separate the truth from lies, expose perilous pitfalls, psychics, mediums, alien spirits, memories of past lives, and share the true hope of the afterlife with others according to the Word of God. So we got a link in the description. And in a moment, I'm going to be showing you, by the way, video of the robot horse.
Horses,
We're talking about the robot
Can't forget
horse
about the horses.
and the stampede at the Kaaba, just so you can see what it's like at the center of Islam. We're going to show you video of that here in a second. But of course, we want to answer your questions. If you have any questions about what we've talked about so far, for the expert of NDEs, he's here right now. Put 4 question marks before your comments, because Evan is right there reading them right now.
Yeah, I want to hear your questions. Put 4 question marks before it. Also, I found some numbers, by the way, you guys were asking about.
Awesome.
That'd be great.
Search volume. So on YouTube, it looks like it gets about 180,000 searches a month, which is wild.
Come on.
Wow.
So we have to retitle this video.
Potentially, yeah, potentially. And then also, if you look at Google Trends, it's been fairly consistent, kind of come down a little bit over the last couple of years, but still gets a great deal of searches. And this blue line here, just for comparison, that is what Google recommended me look this up. Direwolf brought back just in the last couple of days is like blowing up, even compared to NDE, which on YouTube is 180,000 a month. So this is probably, you're looking at
That's crazy.
100,000, 200,000 in a day.
Wow.
Which is insane. I also found this interesting. Near-death experience is mostly searched in Nebraska and Utah.
What's going on in Nebraska and
Man.
Utah, Sean?
I need some kind of a conference in Nebraska or Utah
Yes.
to help people to answer their questions.
I
about
wonder
NDEs.
if culturally, I wonder if there's some sort of history there that makes people look into this. Is there a large number of mediums and psychics in Nebraska and Utah?
Mormons.
Yeah, I mean, thinking of Utah, I don't even know how the NDEs and where that even fits in the spectrum of Mormon theology. I've never gone down
That's
that
right.
rabbit
Yeah.
hole yet.
Well, they believe in summoning the dead, right? That's part
Yeah.
of their
Yeah.
ceremony. So that's interesting. Those of you who are from Nebraska and Utah,
let us know.
Yeah.
Why the peaked interest in NDEs?
what's going on over there? All right. Nebraska and Utah. Wow, that's exactly right. It crunches and compares massive amounts of data, can learn quickly.
Yeah, so they've been asking about, they've been talking with each other about AI and whether or not it can think. So
that
it's
was a great conversation going on in the comments.
Yeah.
I hate to miss it.
Yeah, AI is nowhere close technically to being able to think because of the, not just billions, I mean, there's numbers we can't
Right.
describe. The amount of actions that would have to take at one singular moment for that to happen requires machines that we can't even dream about right now.
Yeah, I think if you actually, turn it on so you can see what AI is doing while it's doing things for you, the amount of steps it takes to complete an action, it's hard
Mind-boggling.
to fathom. You're like, it took all that to adapt this picture? Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Which is still wild, but it's not able to think yet.
Right.
But here's what we will do. Because we are a profit-based system, we're going to impute consciousness to it. We're going to say that it's thinking long
Right.
before it actually ever
Because
does.
it appears to be thinking. It's mimicking human
Yes.
behavior. Yes.
Yes. Which it's just processing information that it has been put into it. But then again, isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, it's true.
But it doesn't have the element of will in it.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right.
Or whose will is programmed
Whose
into
will
it.
will be programmed into it. That's exactly right. Plumbit says, do not underestimate Satan in this AI situation. You're exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get to these
Robot horses.
robot horses and videos you're going to see, and the stampede at the Kaaba, we want to read some more of your comments. But also, guys, if you're gonna have a great awakening in America, there has to be a rude awakening.
Yeah.
And if there's going to be a rude awakening, there has to be coffee. And it has to be good Holy Ghost coffee. So here's what we want you to do to support this program. Go to encountercoffee.com. And with those bags that we sell of coffee, you can get whole bean or ground. We support the persecuted church around the world, rescue slaves out of human trafficking, help the flood victims in Western North Carolina. We do all kinds of stuff, and we do that through the coffee. So stop buying your coffee from woke companies that are preaching a gospel that is antithetical to everything you believe. Go to encountercoffee.com. You can get the Wigglesworth blend. You can get Azusa Street Mornings. There's the Wigglesworth blend right there. And now we have a new decaf blend called the Calvin blend.
That is absolutely brilliant. You sent me a box at Christmas with
Yes.
the Calvin blend, and I just chuckled because, well, it's decaf because there's no Holy Spirit.
There's no power. It has a form, but there's no power. And but it's delicious, the Calvin blend, which is why Calvin is so popular. It tastes good, just has no power.
That's right.
Yeah, it makes you feel intellectual.
That's
Makes
right.
you feel smart, just like you'll feel when you're drinking the Calvin blend. So no need to go to the hyper-reformed camp and deconstruct your faith. All you need is a cup of Calvin in the morning. Get you started.
I've never heard of people moving to the hyper-reform space to deconstruct their faith. That's an interesting comment.
Well, there actually are deconstructing faith. And when you get to the hyper-reformed, there's no faith. There's no life left in it.
Right.
Healing is mocked and ridiculed. The supernatural deliverance is mocked. So actually, real faith is being deconstructed in that. I never heard it that way either until I just said it. But
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, and I can say as a guy who spent a lot of time in the reform space before God, because he has a sense of humor, threw me into the charismatic space for the past 11 years. When people reach a place in life where something horrible happens, often like the perfect God they have in a box isn't big enough for the life circumstances they're facing. Because without the Holy Spirit, without healing and gifts manifesting today, there's not a whole lot of hope in dire life circumstances. And yeah, it's a difficulty that, I'm surprised there isn't more wrestling with that in the reform space.
And speaking of hopelessness, and we'll get to your comments here in a moment, but I want to show you this video from the Islam's most holy site, the Kaaba. And you're going to see what it's like there. There's no organization. Of course, they make this trip to their Mecca. And what most people don't realize is that Islam is based on an alien religion, that this black rock fell out of the sky and all of the Arab tribes.
It's a large cube, isn't it?
Well, it's placed in a large cube. Okay. Yeah, it's placed in a large cube. So all these Arab tribes would worship around this black rock, and eventually Islam developed out of that, and the black rock remains central.
And there's one singular spot they try to get to see.
Yeah, so you go on this journey, it's really unusual, but watch how they believe if you even see the black rock, it can have an impact on your eternal destiny. If you're able to see it, but even in particular, if you're able to touch it. And so if you wonder, Islam, is it a part of the Abrahamic faith? Not really. It kind of hijacks the Abrahamic teachings from the Torah. But this is really what it's about.
Yeah, and it says hundreds of people are killed in stampedes every year visiting the Kaaba. For
How
whatever
come
reason.
no one ever talks about this?
Yeah.
At the most holy site, can you imagine if at the center of Christianity, hundreds of people were killed every year, adherents to Christianity?
Right.
What that would be a top story about how awful
It'd
Christianity
be
is. Yeah, scandalous, exactly right. So take a look at this. They're just trying to get in to see it, because there's a little hole that you can look through to see it or to touch it. See that silver area? That's where there's kind of a window for you to get through and to look at it. Of course, I've been to Muslim nations, and this is part of Islam that you don't see. Trying to get the camera in to be able to see.
Well, and isn't this the ultimate thing? Like most Muslims, this is it.
This is
like a bucket list item. You need to do this at least once when you're alive.
That's exactly right. And what they don't show when we're talking about Islam in the public square is they don't show. I've seen these parades where they're beating themselves bloody in worship, where they walk through the streets and they have these whips, basically like the cat of nine tails.
Wow.
And they're just beating themselves bloody in worship. It is not the religion of peace that is purported to us at its core. Now, there are adherents of Islam who are certainly peaceful people.
Right.
But there's a large percentage of Islam is certainly not. And it's kind of disturbing to watch that. Jason Tipton says, Baal worshipers. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Worshipping a rock that fell out of outer space, which shows the prominence of alien religions in the world today. Now, we'll get to your comments in a second, but you got to see the robo-dog.
Horse.
Robo-horse, dog,
Horse, dog.
Dog, whatever. Have you seen this?
Four-legged
half
robotic
horse.
creature. I don't know. Is it half horse, half dog?
A robot.
So you're going to see some 3D renderings, I think, of this robo-dog, so you can kind of see what it will be able to do, but then you'll see. Go ahead and play.
川崎重工業
Yeah, there
は
it is.
今日、大
Kawasaki.
阪・関西万博に展示する水素で動く
disturbing
4脚ロボットコルレオを公開しました。2050
And the
年の
idea
移
is
動
that it
手
will be
段を
able to
想定
traverse
したコンセ
terrain
プ
that
トモデ
something
ルで
with wheels
乗馬するようにまたが
would
り
not be able to
重心
traverse.
移
I'm
動
not
で
sure
操
which
作し
I'm
ます
afraid of more, the
タイヤでの
the
走行
robo
が
dog
難
or
し
the
い山岳地帯などでも
I don't want either of them chasing me. To be
What about
honest.
a robo-direwolf?
Ooh.
Maybe that's what this is actually, the
Could we even
robo-direwolf.
understand?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I'm not interested in writing that.
No, I don't know.
So let's. You just had to see it. You got it now. We report. You decide.
That's right.
Right. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments. Evan is on top of it. Someone say some.
More like on the side of it.
Stroud said, "I would say that's cray cray." What'd you say, Evan?
I'm more like on the side of it. I don't know about on top of it yet.
You would side saddle it? Is that what you're like a lady? Is that what you're saying?
No, you said I'm on top of it.
Top of the cup.
I'm on the side of it
Okay.
right now. Let's see here. Alice says, using my first bag of Wigglesworth blend. Come on, Alice. That's
Nice.
awesome.
Nice.
Let's see here. Somebody else said, Priscilla said, the Calvinism tastes good but has no power. They love that.
Preach. Yes.
Dave said, got any of that Lazarus dark roast coffee yet? Raising up the dead daily. Yeah, we're thinking
that's a
about
good idea.
we're about to do a new blend, which we've been doing a ton of stuff.
We're playing around with this idea.
We're getting to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're playing around with an idea
be
for a new
awesome.
blend, so we'll let you know. It's
And
more of a
then-
nutty
Yeah,
taste.
I think y'all will like it. Dustin said, "What's the strongest blend of coffee you guys have available?" I'd say Azusa Street Mornings. That's pretty strong. Good for the morning. Those are our questions so far. Honestly, we haven't had any questions yet. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in.
You guys have just been having your own conversation there in the comments. That's okay.
I mean,
having your own show
it's hard
there.
not to talk about dire wolves and robot dogs and whatever else.
I think we covered quite a bit of information here, and the link for the book is in the description. So make sure you get a copy of the NDE Conspiracy, and don't forget, our brand new book is out.
Yes,
They
don't forget
lied
that.
to you about the rapture. It's an instant classic, is what I'm saying.
There you go. I mean,
That's what the critics.
I love, as one of my authors, I love that confidence that you have. That's
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. But we appreciate y'all's help with getting that information out. And what a fascinating book this is, really. What really awaits us beyond the veil. No one else is covering this like you are. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a fun project to write.
Guys, the link is in the description. Check it out, and we will see you next time. God bless. Why is everybody talking about this book? Why is Jimmy Evans, Harry Stone, Lee Brainerd, tremendous end-time Bible prophecy scholar, L.A. Marzulli, Joseph Z., Rick Renner, Troy Brewer, and many others, why are they talking about this?
Well, this is the A-team of the Christian world right now. God's hands are on these voices, but I think you kicked a hornet's nest, and everyone's excited that you did it.
I don't think there's been a defense of the rapture of the church like this, and this is a book for everyone. You need to get your copy today.